So just in case you've been living under a rock, Michael Jackson has recently been accused of paedophilia for the third time, this time very graphically and very luridly in a documentary. And the world is going insane about it. Everyone is pitching in, from normal people to celebrities to anyone with a bit of a platform seems to have something to shout about this, about whether he was very innocent or very, very guilty. And I'm not here to do any of those things. Like, was he innocent? Was he guilty? What is the point of me pitching in? I didn't know the man. I never met him personally. I had no personal relationship with him. There is evidence for, there is evidence against. And for me to state anything would just be heaping yet more pointless conjecture on an issue that, honestly, we will probably never know conclusively. You know, he's dead now. We'll probably never know conclusively what happened and what didn't. But the thing I want to talk about is this cult of celebrity, because the fact is all of us seem to be making our decisions on whether we liked his music or not. You know, oh, I loved his music, but he couldn't possibly be a paedophile. Well, I thought his music was a bit shitty, you know, and his plastic surgery was kind of creepy, so, ooh, he was definitely a paedophile. These seem to be the two places we're coming from with Michael Jackson. People get very, very possessive and very, very defensive about celebrities based on a mythical, imaginary relationship that we have with them. You like someone's music, you liked them in a film one time, they made a few YouTube videos that you liked, and for some reason you suddenly feel that you have to defend to the fucking death everything they have ever done, or similarly, you know, you hated something they did, so now you've got to hate everything they did and they could never be right ever again. We're very, very totalitarian about celebrities. We should realise that human beings are complex people and nobody is a flawless angel nor a completely heinous devil. You know, even the nastiest person in the world was probably lovely to their mother or maybe their wife or their cat. And if you asked, you know, their mother or their wife or their cat, they'd probably say, oh, you know, oh, he was a lovely man. You know, he made me soup when I was ill. He drove me to hospital all the time. He always had time for me, always had time to talk. He was a very kind man, but, you know, also committed mass genocide or whatever. You know, people are complex beings, and similarly you can know people. I think if you've been friends with someone for a very long time, in general probably you like them, you know, you're their friend, you like them, but you will know that they have done some pretty shitty things now and then, that maybe there was a relationship that broke up badly and they weren't entirely in the right, or you've seen them with their parents and they're very, very mean and ungrateful to one of their parents, or, you know, things like that. There is always something flawed about everyone, and there is always something good about everyone. But I do understand this huge cognitive dissonance with celebrities, because for me, Rolf Harris was the paedophile allegation and convicted now that blew my mind. I don't know if Rolf Harris was ever an American celebrity, but in the UK, he was this friendly looking bearded man who, you know, he made videos about animals and he told funny stories about animals. And I actually saw him play live at Glastonbury in 2000 when I was 15. There were people dressed as kangaroos hopping through the crowd. It was this really like lovely, sweet kind of random moment. So to then hear about these things that he did, putting the two ideas you have of him together are very hard. It was much the same thing with Bill. Is it Cosby or Crosby? Cosby. You know, Cosby again. He seemed like such a lovely, like, you know, this sort of lovely dad figure, and then you hear about the things that he did and the drugging the women and. That really blew my mind too. So I understand it's very hard to put together in your head the secret lives that people have. And Michael Jackson had a lot of very, very obsessive fans. You know, I mean, people who like to dress like him, who papered their entire room in his posters. You know, Michael Jackson really inspired a very cultish following. These people, they genuinely don't seem to be able to believe that he could ever do any wrong. And it was much the same with Justin Bieber. You know, obviously Justin Bieber not quite on the same level as Michael Jackson here, but you know, just a bit in terms of fame I'm talking about. But Justin Bieber, when he had the DUI, when there was that thing about him spitting on fans from the top of a building, whatever it was, his fans jumped to his defence. Oh my God, he couldn't possibly have done that. Oh, poor baby Justin being accused by the whole world. Oh my God, I want to give him a hug. Oh, poor thing, must be suffering so much. And there are people who genuinely feel that they have a very intense personal understanding of the people they like, who they've never met. They've never met them, they've never known them. All they know is the polished version that has been put out by their personal representation teams and their music. And music particularly does seem to inspire this kind of cultish thinking. And particularly if it's music that you loved when you were growing up or you were a teenager and you have so many memories attached to it. And music is amazing for the way that it can bring back memories. That, you hear a certain song and you're like immediately back in a certain place with a certain ex or whatever. So your attachment to bands and to singers especially becomes very, very deep and emotional. And when it's someone like Michael Jackson who wrote his own lyrics and sung them, then you really do feel that person personally, because you've heard them pouring out their heart to you, sung so beautifully, pouring out their heart in all these eloquent, poetic ways. And you bond to it and you feel like, oh my God, these lyrics express what I'm thinking too. And oh, they must be just like me. We must have so much in common. But you still don't know the person. You still don't. And I mean, I do recommend people to, when it comes to their favourite bands and their favourite musicians, we have the internet now and it's very easy to find a lot of actual interviews with those bands and those people, because it's very, very surprising a lot of the time when you see interviews with these people that you have this certain viewpoint of. They're usually very, very different. I mean, a good example is Kurt Cobain, that, people... I mean, in my day, before the internet, when I was growing up and I was obsessed with Kurt Cobain, I had this sort of image of this incredibly tragic, sort of very sad, sort of depressed person. I think everyone is in love with that image of Kurt Cobain as this sort of tragic Jesus martyr. But when you watch his interviews, often, and little video clips and things of him, often he's really kind of quite lighthearted, has kind of this sort of dry wit, is quite up for kind of messing around and pranking around and actually doesn't really seem like this tragic kind of gloom cloud that he's been made out to be and that you get the impression of. It's interesting. Another thing I want to bring up is the way that people seem to think they own their favourite celebrities. One example of this was obviously, and I know I'm kind of referring quite a bit to teenage girls here, and obviously there is a bit more hormonal drama when it's that, but a good example of this obviously is Kristen Stewart and Rob Pattinson with the whole Twilight thing. Then they started dating and it was like, oh my goodness, Twilight's coming true, this is so lovely, this is so sweet. And then she cheated on him and it all fell apart, and there was a lot of outrage about how could you do that to him, how could you ruin this perfect fantasy that we've been watching from afar. And you even see it with YouTube couples that, people, they really ship people together, and then when there's a couple, they get really invested in their relationship and it falls apart and they almost act as though it's like their own parents getting divorced and things. And there's this, how could you do this to us? And it's, these are just human beings living their own life, and they're going to be flawed and they're going to do things. But more than that, it's the deifying of celebrities that I find very, very weird. I did watch the Michael Jackson documentary, and the scenes you see whenever he's like driving through or the public see him, and there are people, trying to grab at his clothes. There are people in tears, waving signs saying Michael Jackson is an angel, and they're literally sobbing and screaming and passing out because they're so completely overawed at being in the presence of another human being. I mean, yes, amazing music, amazing dancer, fascinating person, still a human being. And the way that people do react to celebrities with, you see people, there's a celebrity, you've loved them from afar for a long time, but is it still too crazy to expect you to kind of go, oh, hi, I'm a human, you're a human, let's communicate as humans. I really like your music. Let's have a civil conversation, not like, you know, that's that's a very, very strange way to react to another human being. I met Princess Diana when I was about 8-9 years old, I think. I met Princess Diana, shook her hand, and I remember one of my friends was literally like in tears about the whole thing, and I was like, "What's wrong?" And she's like, "I'm just so happy. I'm just so happy." I was like, "You're crying because you're happy? What? I don't understand this." Because to me, it was like, yes, you know, yeah, she's royalty, you know. And when you're young, you have the, oh my goodness, the royalty. You know, she's royalty. Very pretty lady, very nice, very dignified. All I really remember thinking was, my goodness, she's got a very limp handshake. And my mum said, "Oh, it's so her hand doesn't get tired, because they don't really shake your hand. They just sort of grasp it and move on." So that happened. That's really my biggest celebrity encounter is Princess Diana, and obviously that was before mobile phones. Whereas these days, I suspect that, you know, it would have been lines upon lines of people flashing cameras at her like some sort of zoo animal, and it's very peculiar. We have really got to stop believing that celebrities we worship from afar are some sort of other species. They are not zoo animals, and they are not gods. They are human beings with good points and flaws, and you do not know them personally. If you do not know them personally, try not to jump to their hating or to their defence on the sake of, I liked his CD, or I liked him in this movie the one time. You don't have to be in love with every aspect of someone just because you liked a movie or a song or a video or a witty Twitter post or a particular comedy skit or whatever. And the wholesale love for people as well, that it seems like with bands and stuff, it seems to be like, if you're going to be a fan of something, you have to love everything. You have to have heard every really obscure song, or you're not a real fan. How dare you wear the t-shirt when you only liked that one album? We're very, very, very kind of obsessive and totalitarian about celebrities and the things we like. So yes, in summary, before I can prattle any more, Michael Jackson, was he innocent? Was he guilty? Well, I definitely know people can fling shit and allegations at people in the public eye, and the allegation will be writ large, the apology will be writ small. During the whole big paedophile thing in England, a member of my family, actually, who's pretty high up in politics, war hero, quite famous, his house was raided at 6 o'clock in the morning. This dude's quite elderly. He had a dying wife. He was raided by police in SWAT fucking uniforms at 6 o'clock in the morning, because of the allegation of one person, which was immediately dismissed because his war activities, you know, as a soldier or whatever he was at that time, he was actually stationed in a completely different country when the allegation took place. So it blew over. But the allegation was front page news. The apology was on about page 27. It was this big. That can happen. In Michael Jackson's case, however, this is the third time this has happened. And I know people have said about his activities with sleeping in beds with children, and it was just a more trusting time in the 80s. You know, people did that. I was a kid in the 80s, and I had quite a kind of dysfunctional upbringing. I slept over at the houses of pretty much strangers quite a lot. I did have a lot of sleepovers and things like that. Never once was it considered that I would sleep in the bed of an adult, even an adult woman, even one of my dad's girlfriends. I would not have been sharing a bed with that woman, and you know, unless there were no other beds in the place. You know, if you're in a big house, there are other beds, or you can at least put a camp bed down. You don't just go and sleep in the bed of a strange adult. It's not a modern invention. It's not a modern paranoia that you don't put your children to bed with a strange man. You know? I feel there's something a bit funky going on there. You know, what was it? Was it blown up into something it wasn't? I don't know, but there's definitely something a bit funky about all of that. But overall, I did not know the guy. I was not there. Therefore, I am not going to conclusively come in here and say, absolutely he was a terrible fiend, or oh, I really, really loved Billie Jean, therefore he couldn't possibly have done. Celebrities, good bits, bad bits, clever things, shit things, they're in a huge position of power. That does corrupt at times. They go through stages, dysfunctional people, I think anyone would say Michael Jackson was a bit dysfunctional, with the plastic surgery, with the drug use that killed him. He had a lot of tragic, dysfunctional stuff going on, and I honestly don't know whether if it was true, I don't know whether he was really aware of the damage he was doing, that he was a very childlike person, and, did he just have such a bizarre idea of the world and such a bizarre idea of childhood that there wasn't really malicious intent, but malicious happening? I don't know. But, all complete hearsay, complete wafflings of a stranger on the internet, unless you literally knew the dude well and were in his life, and, or are a part of the legal services who have been investigating him. I don't think it's really a place to say, but yes, in final conclusion, celebrities, question everything, do not fall head over heels in love with a stranger on the basis of a song. So just cling on to whatever personal memories you had of him. I mean, with Rolf Harris, even though he did atrocious things and he's done his jail time and all the rest of it, I still look back fondly on that Glastonbury gig in 2000. That is still a memory I had. And it was a really, really fun gig, and yes, it's tinged with sadness now that I don't know what he was getting up to the rest of that weekend at that festival and what was going on in his life behind all of this. But my memory of that gig in the sunshine with the kangaroos hopping through the crowd, it was still a beautiful day, and I still have that beautiful memory. And I have a complex enough human brain to hold in my mind the complex theories of beautiful day in the sunshine, right laugh, but man did some bad things, and life is complex, in summary. I'm going to shut up now because this is just a bit too long, so but yes, let me know if you have thoughts about this cult of celebrity thing. I don't really want it to turn into a whole slanging match about guilty versus innocent. The whole point of this really is that we don't know. We didn't know him. We have nothing to say. So anyway, peace out.